4% rule has been called reckless, outdated, even dangerous by some people. And you've probably seen headlines saying it no longer works, that retirees are being misled, or that following it will cause you to run out of money. And while some of that may be true for certain people, if you're retired or close to it, and you've ever wondered whether the 4% rule actually applies to your situation, this really does matter, because ultimately everyone's trying to figure out how much they can live off of. And because here's the truth most people miss: the 4% rule isn't the real problem. The way people use it is the problem. And after age 60, that misunderstanding can quietly derail an otherwise solid retirement plan. By the end of this video, you'll understand what the 4% rule was designed to do, why it often breaks down in real life, especially recently, and how retirees actually think about withdrawals instead. The 4% rule came from academic research that asked a very specific question. If someone retired at the worst possible moment in market history, how much could they withdraw, adjusted for inflation, and still have their money last about 30 years or so, give or take? And it's obviously different for everybody, but that was basically what it was designed to do. It was designed really to be a stress test, not a personal retirement plan, not an income strategy, and certainly not a guarantee. And if anyone thinks of it that way, they really shouldn't. Yet, many people hear 4%, multiply their portfolio by that number, and assume that they've completely solved retirement for themselves. And that's where problems really begin, and it can become incredibly dangerous for people. Before we go any further, if we haven't met before, my name is Will Snodgrass. I'm a CFP, and I'm the owner of Matt25 Capital. We're a Christian wealth advisory practice located in Texas, but we're with people across the country. Retirement planning after 60 is fundamentally different from planning during your working years. And here's what I mean by that. During what we would call the accumulation phase, which is really while you're saving during your working years, volatility is largely your friend. You're adding money, you're buying investments at different prices, and time smooth things out. This is what's known as dollar cost averaging. In retirement, though, that relationship completely changes. Now you're withdrawing. Now timing actually really does matter, and losses early on can do far more damage than losses later on. I won't go too deep here because we cover this in another video, but this is why averages can be misleading in retirement. When withdrawals are happening, the order of returns matter more than the actual average return itself, which is surprising to a lot of people. This is one of the reasons that rigid rules struggle once you move from saving to spending. Another issue is how the rule assumes that spending works. The 4% rule assumes that a smooth inflation-adjusted withdrawal is going to happen every single year. But real retirement spending isn't flat, and it's really not a straight line either. It changes over time because life changes. Often it starts out higher earlier in retirement, then is more stable during the middle years, and sometimes higher again later in life due to healthcare or different support needs. It's usually U-shaped. And that variability alone makes a one-size-fits-all rule completely imperfect and not practical. Then factor in inflation. Inflation rarely shows up all at once. It works quietly, typically in the background, as you see from charts, slowly reducing purchasing power over long periods of time. That's why income planning in retirement has to think in terms of decades, not just years. Remember, this is a marathon, not just a sprint. The 4% rule was never designed to manage these moving parts. It was designed to test historical durability under very specific assumptions, some of which may not be appropriate for everybody. Another important limitation is taxes, which are ever present. Withdrawals don't arrive evenly. Where your income comes from, whether it be taxable accounts, brokerage accounts, tax-deferred accounts, or tax-free accounts like Roths, affects how much you actually get to keep every year. Two retirees can withdraw the same exact dollar amount and have very different after-tax outcomes once Social Security, taxation, Medicare premiums, and future tax policies are all considered, and that makes things very different. The 4% rule doesn't address any of that, though. People focus on just the percentages when the real issue is how income behaves once paychecks stop. Once you go from a paycheck to your assets, it's a completely different situation. It also assumes there's no flexibility. But flexibility is one of the most powerful tools that retirees have at their disposal. So in practice, what we see is successful retirement income strategies are rarely about pulling a fixed percentage every year, no matter what happens. They're more so about structure And typically, what that means is having different pools of money designed for different purposes and different durations as well, thus different tax treatments in some cases, different risk tolerances. Some assets are positioned to support near-term spending, so you're not forced to sell investments during, let's say, difficult or volatile markets, while some are positioned for medium-term needs, allowing income sources to be replenished over time. And then some are also positioned for longer-term growth to help combat things like inflation, to support later life goals, and perhaps one day have legacy dreams fulfilled. This kind of structure, though, what it does is it creates options for people. So instead of asking, can I withdraw 4% every year no matter what happens, the better question becomes, how do I manage income responsibly through different phases of retirement and my life? That shift mentally makes a big difference. And what we've noticed is the people who struggle most in retirement are often the ones who try to force certainty where flexibility is really needed. It's putting a square peg in a round hole. The people who tend to feel more at peace, however, are the ones who understand that retirement isn't static because life is not static. Markets change, tax rules change, life is going to change at times. And what we've found from working with retirees is a good plan accounts for all those things. So the 4% rule can still be useful as a reference point per se or quick math, and it can help frame discussions, and it can be a part of stress testing even, but it should not be treated as a promise or a universal solution and certainly never a guarantee. Especially once you get to age 60 and beyond, retirement planning shifts from maximizing returns to managing risk, predicting cash flow, and having good decision-making skills. The real goal isn't withdrawing the perfect percentage every single year, year after year. The real goal should be confidence, knowing your money can support your life even when things don't go exactly as you planned. And I'm sure most people watching this video will know exactly what I'm talking about. There's another video on this channel, by the way, that walks through why many retirement plans quietly fail after 60. And the context connects directly to what we're talking about here. I can link that in the description below. If this has raised any questions for you, if you want, you can find us at Matt25Capital.com or reach us at info@Matt25Capital.com. You'll also find all our contact information in the description below. But either way, I hope that this helps shed some light on the 4% rule, some of its benefits, but also some of its drawbacks. If anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out. Thanks again, and God bless.